Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of the Emerging Brands podcast with Kelly Bennett. I have a very special guest who I personally am a huge fan of their store. I have shopped at the Goods Mart many times, and Rachel Krupa, the founder of the Goods Mart and Krupa Consulting, is here today. Thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to chat with you and
Me too.
have like a fun discussion.
Absolutely. So the Goods Mart, when I went into it, I absolutely got the vibe of like this healthier 7-Eleven convenience store. I thought it was so fun that you had organic slushies and just fun things that you would love to get at a convenience store, but without all the junk. Right. I saw Vogue wrote an article and said, what would it look like to have a healthier 7-Eleven? And it was a profile on your store. So could you give us a little bit of the background of how you started the Goods Mart?
Yeah, I would love that. And I think that kind of backs into having been in the PR industry for now 22 years, which is crazy.
Amazing.
Um, Started my own agency 14 years ago, and we focused on food and wellness brands. And it was really looking at there was a better for you CPG brand for everything in a classical convenience store. But why didn't we find those better for you products in convenience stores? And so it was really taking a look at that and just being like, okay, can we create a convenience store for our generation that cared about the quality of the ingredients that went inside? But also because I had the PR agency, friends kept coming into our office and kind of shopping like kind of like our shelves of our clients. And they're like, you should create a 7-Eleven, but with like all your brands that you work with. And I was like, okay, great, I will. And so that was kind of like the conversation. And I think I talked about it with friends for 2 years of being like, I'm going to do like a 7-Eleven, but all better for you with like our clients. And they're like, okay, do it, do it, do it. And I'm a believer in if you talk about it enough and
Mhm.
like just put it out there, you either have to do it or you have to shut up about it
Yep.
because you have two ways to go, and I'm a believer in it's like, okay, let's do it. Let's try it. And it was really more of a organic way of like, okay, I'm going to do this now without knowing anything of how to do it. And did it with a little bit of like rose-colored glasses on at the beginning.
Right.
And now it's over 5 years old. The
Oh,
brand, which is wild. And it's changed and morphed so much. And I feel like I have a PhD in like retail and just business because I didn't before.
I mean, to go from one location and now you have multiple locations in New York City, correct?
Yeah, we have 3 locations now.
Amazing.
Uh, yeah, it's wild. It's wild of just like the beautifulness of like unknowing and saying yes to things and then figuring it out backwards.
Which I'm really happy you said because I know so many founders, and in particular, I find this with women founders, people who maybe haven't seen someone in their own friend circle or family be a founder, or they're doing something for the first time, can feel really hesitant of, well, if I don't know all the things about every single step, I'm holding myself back. And I'm of the same mindset as you, is let's just try it, because you never know, and you'll probably figure it out better in the
Yep.
trenches by trying to figure it out all in your head by yourself, by and large. So could you give us a little insight of what was really that push of like, okay, I've been talking about this for 2 years, I'm gonna do this?
They're really, I mean, I didn't have a business plan. It
I
was
love it.
It was exactly, it's one of those things that I think that sometimes we are having a hard time to just do it.
Yep.
But at the same time, you can put everything on paper, and guess what? Everything you put on paper is some of it's going to come true, but majority of it's not. So you can have your game plan, but there's going to be deviations, and you need to be able to have those flex and flows in order to really build of like what you innately will be building. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just like you have an idea of what's going to happen, but it's going to go twists
You
and
don't
turns.
know also.
I have no idea. And yeah, and that's like more of it was just like I had a business manager at the time that I was like, I'm going to do this. And he was like, where are you gonna get money from? And I was like, I don't know. Can we figure out a bank something, you know? So I got a line of credit from the bank initially to open up the first store. And that was because I was 8 years in business with my PR agency that I was able to get that line of credit. And I understand that that's hard for a lot of people, but I already had a business that,
You were
had
able to leverage.
growth. Yeah. And so from there, it was just like, okay, ask for help. And I think that's also another big thing that especially women and entrepreneurs overall don't really do is ask for help. And I think that was one of the things that I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask for help. I asked former clients of who's the best like general like contractor that you have? Like, how do I do the operations side? Like I can do the marketing and PR, but on the other side, it's completely different. So it's tapping into people that have their superpowers that can help you. And I think that was like the biggest learning. It was more of just like asking for help and kind of being a little bit vulnerable and a little bit in that space of I don't know in
Mhm.
order to really cultivate and create something that is stronger, I think, than what you could actually create on paper because you're utilizing and tapping into humans that have their superpowers and their strengths that are so different than yours.
Absolutely. And you don't have to do it all by yourself. I think for many entrepreneurs, and I used to have this mindset, if I didn't do everything myself, it wasn't quote unquote as pure or couldn't be as successful or put my name on it. But as I've gotten older and been building brands for now 15 years, I'm like, whoa, you can't do it all yourself, nor should you. And so I'm really glad that you said that because it is vulnerable to raise your hand and ask for help. However, you could go so much further faster by tapping into other people who see your vision and support you and want to share what they know with you so that you don't have to make those same mistakes again or what they
100%. Yeah, and I think everything is about we versus I,
did.
because like you're never able to build anything yourself. It's always collectively other people too. So when you look at something, it's building as like we built this together. And
Right.
then people also want to support and lean in because they were part of that growth and part of helping you. And so you have so many more megaphones than just your own at the end of the day. And it's just beautiful. And I think that's where it's just like having the strength to say, yes, I'm going to do it, but also being able to be very clear of, no, this is the way that I really want to take it. And having that as like kind of like your North Star is like your gut of like, no, this is what it is. Because people are going to tell you 15 different ways to do it. But like, know your North Star in your gut. Like, no, this is like the vision I have, and let's go after this. Can you help with this vision of it? Like, people are going to provide their 2 cents, but not all the 2 cents are going to add up.
I think that's a really great call out of being open and flexible and asking for, insight and having a really clear direction of where you're going. So you're not just being reactionary to every person's input and ideas and their frame of reference and their point of view. And so that's a really great call out of having that direction, having that clarity and vision, but then being open to how it's going to come together.
Yeah, but by the way, you're going to be open and you want to do it your own way or do it
Mhm.
another person's way, and it's probably going to mess up. And
Yeah,
like you look at that as like actually a learning side too, because
right.
it's like I feel like it's like friends are always asking like, but what are the biggest mistakes? And I'm like, I don't think I actually made a mistake. I think I had incredible moments of growth throughout this process of building both companies because without the quote unquote mistakes, you don't have growth. So you need to grow
Absolutely.
in order to build what is actually the intention of what that is. And I'm a big believer in like you get signs of like directions you need to go into if you're looking at it and like kind of like accepting like, oh, this person I'm reaching out to, I asked this question and that's the person's talking about this thing. And then I'm asking this person and they're kind of talking about something similar. Like, is this something the universe kind of showing me like nudge, nudge, nudge? Maybe you should look at this a little bit more.
I resonate with that so much because I am a big believer of following those small signs, right? And having kind of more of that curiosity of how and kind of that's why I do love social media. That's how I found your brand and you personally just by following different people and being interested in different things and coming back to the city and being like, what's cool, what's happening in the space of food, beverage, lifestyle. And I found your brand and started following you. You know what I mean? It's in that now you're on my podcast, which is so cool. It's because when we're open to just making those connections and exploring and not putting pressure on it. That was a big thing that I had to learn, of not just staring at it all the time.
Right? But that's the thing.
Which is hard.
But I love what you said of being curious, and that curiosity is like one of my favorite words. And I think that you have to have as a founder and just like as a human in life is being curious and open to ask the questions of why are we doing it this way? Or what if we try it this way? And being curious of like all different potentials and opportunities and don't rule them out immediately. Like just be like, okay, let's look at it. Let's like, okay, what about this? Like, no, it doesn't feel right, but this one does. But being open for that curiosity to grow.
Absolutely. For the Goods Mart, what do you see as the next stage of growth? And in the space that you're in, I feel like it really exploded, even from 5 years ago to now. I too have worked in this like better for you food, beverage space for a while now. And I would love to hear from your perspective where you see like the evolution of the space and your brand in particular. Um, yeah.
I think it's, I mean, from like a space of just like CPG industry in general, I think it's hard because like I think that there's so much unknown right now, especially from more of the financial side of like investments and
Fair.
building something. But I think the beautiful side of it is like brands are growing in a more slow and steady pace versus more about like how much money you can raise, what's your evaluation, but you have to be a little bit more thoughtfulness and like how do you reach profitability before trying to grow so much. And I think that's like where we're going to see like the brands that are smart and nimble, being able to make it the long term. And there's not going to be this pop of like 2 years and we're selling. But I think it's like long and steady. But also if you really look at the brands that we like kind of admire these days or that they get a lot of like from a press perspective, you look at the milk bars of the world, like Sweet Green, even if you look at like Olipop and Poppy and like the incredible brands in this emerging CPG brand, they've been around for 5, 6, 7 years. Like Milk Bar, Sweet Green, they're over 10 years old.
Right.
So these overnight successes, and like I think that's the pressure that a lot of people put on themselves of like, oh my gosh, it's 3 years and I'm not here. But the brands that you are admiring have been doing it half, double the time that you've been doing it. And the universe in our country has changed so much in the past 3 years that you have to have a different playbook. And I think that's like the exciting part in the future is like growth is going to be more slow and steady. But I think we're going to start to accept that more. And I think the focus is going to be on how do you actually create an incredible brand that is more profitable versus growth from a scale perspective and raising tons of capital to do more explosiveness. So I think that from a category, and I think that's smart for any business. And I think that's like the way that we should be looking at business in general and like celebrating those that maybe don't have like the evaluation of X, Y, and Z, but they're profitable and they have a really great company. And that might be success for them. And we should celebrate that.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's so funny. When I was in Pilates, I said that I had come from Pilates. That's why I have my hat on and my sweatshirt. I was thinking about that. And I think too, like preparing for our conversation, I was thinking about your brand and just the vibe I get from you. And I didn't even know all the details, but it kept coming back to me of like the future is going to be like slow and steady, more sustainable, not burning yourself out, really honing in on what you personally do best, do that best, and really think of more of the long term. And that was kept going through my head in Pilates, not kind of like nerdy things I think about.
Oh, Pilates is the
That
best
was
meditation, by the way.
it really is. I always get such good ideas when I'm in Pilates. And I'm like also like, oh shit, I gotta like stay balanced and like doing a plank. But I was thinking about that just this morning, and I'm like, I like that shift because I used to be in that world too, of like startup and like, all this pressure of what you have to raise or be evaluated for, and it sucks. In my personal experience, it just sucked.
Agreed.
And so I really love that you touched upon that because I think that is the conversation that we need to speak more about. And for you, where I know so many people look up to you and what you've built and what you're building, for you to say that, it's just a really nice testament of like, okay, cool. Like if you're doing it, I feel like I could wrap my head around that and feel good about that plan.
Yeah, and it feels good. And I think that's like over time, you just know what your true, your true expression of the brand that you're building.
Yeah.
Um, and that kind of goes for us is, we love emerging brands. We want to be that place that brands are going to first and they're getting a sampling of like how to do retail and like be able to ask the questions that you don't want to ask a classical buyer because you might not be able to feel like you know what you're talking about, but
Yep.
ask those questions with us because like for us, it's like, let us shape you so that you can go on to like the larger retailers, that you can go on to natural and conventional stores, but like get your feet wet with us, like make mistakes because that's what we understand of like what you're going to do so that you're set up for success. And so that's like our like North Star is just like, we want to help and like touch on emerging brands and help them grow. And that is just like asking questions that is like focused on like influencers and like focused on like the network of humans that love us. And like what you're saying is like so incredible and feels so warm inside is just like that discovery side. And then now we're looking at and starting to do more curations for companies and corporations where we're doing
That's
like
cool.
yeah, and so we're doing curations and piloting things with Alfred Coffee. We are doing the mini bars for the Waldorf Astoria in Beverly Hills, the Beverly Hilton, the Smith and Tribeca, and other Kimpton properties in Hell's Kitchen, New York, Hotel Theta, and Romer. And so for us, it's like, let's get these emerging brands into more places and
I
being
love
able to
that.
be that curator. And so it's all about discovery and just growth of them. So again, like you find it here, you find it here, then you're going to shop somewhere else. And our biggest testament of our, like, for me, it's just like they started at the goods and now they're everywhere. And that's like a great
So cool.
feeling. It's just like we were able to help them and they are now going public or they were acquired, but we helped like shape their like plan. And
Absolutely.
that's like kind of like our core of like what the entire like expression of the goods is.
I love that so much. And also the fact that you're able to bring in your background and the fact that you have a PR agency, marketing, and bringing that into the space. What a cool combination.
I think we just figured it out, after 5 years. Because I think that's like whole part of like having businesses. For the first 2 years, I don't think like people like the brands in the store knew I had a PR agency and the PR agency didn't know, like our clients didn't know that I had a store because I was too scared for them to think that I was stretched too thin in
Oh, that's
order to
interesting.
run an agency or to run a store. And so I kind of kept them so separate because I was just more nervous that it was just you're stretching yourself too thin type of conversation versus like people can run two companies and then these actually are very complementary towards each other. And
Totally.
now we have really leaned into that and like celebrate that of like, let's help, let's do this with that. Or, clients like we're able to see this insight because of like the sales in the store or like really cool categories that are like either empty. I'm like, you should maybe focus on innovation here or from like a brand perspective of like you need help with PR, great, come over here and let's help you. And
Great.
so they're more completely separate companies, but there's now like a mushy like beautiful like it's like the Oreo where they're like the two like
Totally.
cookies and we're like the beautiful sweetness in the middle.
I love it. And I understand in respect of keeping also just from a brand strategy perspective, the two brands really separate and clear. But when it's almost like a partnership, once you're clear on your side of the street, then you can see how things can work together. Two brands can work together or a founder and a brand, right? And so that's also a really great point of give yourself some time to see what's going to really shape up and shape out from the concept and the brand. And then being able to see how it could integrate. Maybe if you have another business or if you have another creative endeavor you want to follow, giving yourself a little bit of time to see how they could all work together, but being disciplined to really shape each brand themselves.
Yeah, and I think giving yourself space to do so. Because like I think the biggest thing is that we don't do is give ourselves space to be creative or to take a step back so that you can get the bird's eye view
Mm.
of like the company or the creative endeavor that you are doing. Because in order to have time to look down and take that space, then you're going to open up more to see where you need to go and where is lacking or where do you need to put your energy. But if you're in the day-to-day like growth and rut of it, it's very, very daunting. Do you know what I mean? You're just like,
Oh,
oh,
I do.
it's like gets dark, but you're like, I need to see the light again. And I think that's where we also have to be able to step and to have pause. And what you said is like, go to Pilates, take personal time because you need to flex your brain and other things in order to
Yeah,
make yourself more strength. And that's not even just as an entrepreneur, that's in like life skills that I hopefully we learn over time.
totally. And it's something that I'm practicing again because I've done the extremes of like super entrepreneur work in startup culture, all of that hectic, crazy, and then working for myself again and seeing what that balance is. And even just yesterday, I took a nap during the day and I woke up and there was 3 emails waiting for me of clients who are ready to either sign up for a new program or, new potential client. And I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I should take naps more often. I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, that was the best nap ever. And because you could be in the trenches and just staring at your computer for hours and days and weeks on months on end. So I just had that reminder just yesterday of like,
You should,
just take a nap, it's okay. And then waking up refreshed. And I was like, this is great.
yes,
These are
I
the
think that's the
emails I
biggest
like to get.
takeaway. The biggest takeaway from this together is more of take naps and take personal time.
Yeah,
But it's so true because you need that. Like otherwise you're just looking at your computer, but also if you got you were looking at your computer and you got like the new business or like the thing that you wanted, are you going to actually be able to celebrate it and look at it and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is great." Or are you
right.
just going to be another one thing that comes in of like, "Oh gosh, I have more to do now."
Right. Exactly. And just having that shift of perspective and also allowing yourself to celebrate the steps, right? I just really needed that personal reminder. So I'm so happy that that was also what you've been sharing about today, because I think that is the conversation we need to be reminded of and keep in the back of our minds, because entrepreneurship is no joke, as we both know, and probably anybody listening to this knows. So just having this reminder in this conversation of people that we look up to and really admire, knowing that that's what they're doing, I think that also gives reassurance of like, okay, cool, that is real, and that is also strategic in a way, and you could trust it a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
it's so important.
I love that. So one last thing I wanted to ask you,
Mhm.
I know we touched upon it, but would there be one piece of advice you would tell a founder who's in the CPG space, food and bev, wellness, anything that I know we were just talking a lot about introspection of, taking a step back and looking at what you've done. Anything that stands out that you would want to remind someone who's
I
starting out?
think I think it's like what we touched on. It's just like looking at every failure or looking at every like mishap as a growth period. Because if you look at that, then you're never failing. You're always growing and learning and like being able to celebrate growth. And I think that there's never a good time to launch or start something, maybe from a press perspective or brand perspective in regards of like circular type of things, but like to rip that band-aid off and be like, I'm going to do this. Because again, if you look at it as just like, would you rather have regret of never doing it or say I did it and it didn't work? Like to me, it was more of like, I would rather just be like, it didn't work. I tried really hard. or I tried and I know what I would need to do differently in order to make it successful versus I had that idea 5 years ago, or I should have done it. That's like, I feel like hard at the end of the day.
I couldn't agree more. I too am always of the mindset of at least I tried. I put it out there. I may touch it upon it again, or I would never do it again. Or I reiterate and refine what that idea was, but I would much rather get it out of my head and just put it out there versus feeling like, oh man, that was really good. I should have done it. Like to me, that regret is way more intense than just putting things out there and seeing if it works or not.
The
So I
regret is
totally
so
agree.
hard. Yeah. And I think that's just like a life thing with anything.
Right.
Just otherwise your head spins. Or at
Yes.
least mine does. Mine just
Same.
spins and spins and spins, and you're like, oh, I got to get it out and do whatever
Absolutely.
you have to do to get it out.
I loved this conversation. I appreciate you so much. This will definitely be a good put on repeat conversation when you're having one of those days of like, oh man, is this going to work out? I need to see the light again. I know I personally will be replaying this. How can people connect with you on all the brands?
Oh, you can always do Instagram. So at Krupa, so Rach Krupa or the Goods Mart or Krupa Consulting. LinkedIn is always wonderful. I feel like there's so many more modes of reaching out to people these days, and
There's so many ways, but I'll link them all in the show notes. And honestly, Rachel, this was such a refreshing conversation. I'm really happy we recorded this on a Friday because it feels like a really nice way to wrap up the work week. And I just appreciate you so much of all you've created and all the insight you shared today. It definitely was like the nice refresh that I needed to end the week on a really great note. So
this
thank
is
you.
like so warm and cozy, and I feel like it's such a good way to end the year and start a new year.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes.
like giving that like opportunity in the space for us to have this conversation.
My pleasure. Well, thank you so much. Everyone, go follow. I'll put all the show links in the notes. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Emerging Brands podcast with Kelly Bennett. And I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.